Okay, let's go. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for having me here at Frontend Nation. I'm super excited to speak here. And today I'll be teaching how to build interactive async UIs with React 19 and Ariakit. So my name is Aurora. Again, I'm from Norway and I work as a consultant at Crayon Consulting in Oslo. And again, as mentioned in the intro, I use the Next.js App Router every day at my current project, and I use a lot of React 19 and the other features from there, like server components. So that's where I get my inspiration from. And on that note, I was initially thinking of telling a story of the inspiration behind this talk. But, let me rather show you and just jump right into the demo. So what you're looking at here is a project dashboard demo app with an account selector. So you'll see I have an account selector here. And this is now based on a real feature I built for my current project, which is the inspiration behind this talk. And let's pretend that your designer just gave you this nice custom UI with a custom account selector that didn't exist in your component library. So you just built it yourself. And all is well, right? Let's try this out. So the account selector allows me to switch account, get a loading state spinner, and then eventually see a toast and the updated dashboard. There was kind of a strange interaction there. The loading state was not really in sync with the visual update, but that's fine. Let's just continue interacting with the dropdown. So I see here that the keyboard navigation is incorrectly implemented. I'm trying to use the arrows, but it's not working. So actually, I have to use the tabs, and then I tab out, and the menu doesn't close, and then I can't escape. I can't click outside. There's just a lot of problems with this. It doesn't have any smart positioning, so even if the screen is like this, it doesn't know where to go. Lots of problems with this dropdown. So my challenge here is I'm trying to build a custom UI component, yet I want it to be accessible and interactive. But unlike the previous speaker, I'm not an accessibility expert. I don't know all the ARIA attributes either. And I also want to smoothly handle the async operations with a good UX. But I don't want to write lots of code to get all of this right. So this situation was me not long ago. Maybe some of you have been in a similar situation. And that's why the goal of this demo is to show you how to make this custom account selector interactive and accessible and improve the unstable UX using certain tools, Ariakit and React 19. So let's get to the code. So the setup here is the Next.js App Router. I'm using Prisma ORM and Prisma Postgres database, and then Tailwind CSS v4. And I already completed all the data fetching here. Since I'm using the App Router, I have server components. I'm fetching data with these data fetching functions through my data access layer. Using Prisma, I can get accounts, an account, and the current account. And this is based on a cookie value, so that I'm just simulating the whole authentication flow here. And when I load the page, I have suspenses with fallbacks, giving me this nice loading state. And everything here is dynamic and slowed down, so we can see this. And this is not the focus of today, and I've covered it before in previous talks if you're interested, or you can just check out the code on GitHub later. So that's our setup, but the problems are in this account selector component, right? It's reading a promise from the server, this accounts promise, current account promise, with the React 19 use. And here you might recognize this typical React code, handle switch account. It has this as loading state, expanded, current account state, setting the loading states here, calling an API, yeah, familiar stuff. And I sort of did this naive optimistic update and then rolling it back. Let's say I just coded this without thinking too much, and it works, but it could definitely be better. As for the select, it's really hard to read because I just have divs and spans all over. And probably I should have used extracted components or used different elements or something, but this is what I have right now. So let's try to fix the accessibility issues first, just to see. Oops. Let's say I wanted to handle the escape key. Well, that will look something like this. That's just one interaction, right? It's working. OK, fine. What about handling keyboard navigation? And focus. Well, that's quite a lot more code, huh? I don't want to go there. And this is just 2 interactions, right? Then there's things like the click outside, what else? the screen reader, of course. Let's not even think about the screen reader. There's so many things we have to do, and someone like me who's not an accessibility expert, it's just a lot, and it's going to be hard to maintain and hard to get right. So I don't want to implement this myself. Let's remove this code. Let's rather use Ariakit to solve our problems. So I'm going to import Ariakit here. And Ariakit is a React library that provides unstyled primitive components and hooks for building interactive UIs. And it has this declarative syntax, components accessible by default following the WCAG standard, and have all the functionality that we need built in. And they also compose together. So let's use this to step-by-step just replace all of these divs with Ariakit equivalent. I'm not going to need this relative class name because Ariakit can handle that for me. And the first thing I need is a select provider, which is going to make everything work together. So let's just wrap this around the whole component. And I can actually add a value here, and we'll set this to the current account. Whoops. ID. For the label, this is the label. I can use a select label. What about the open button? Well, I can use a select. And I don't need this on-click anymore. Let's just remove this because Ariakit will handle that for me. What about this here, this chevron down? Well, I can actually use a select arrow, which will be also accessible by default. I don't need these properties. Now, for the rotation, so since my expanded state is no longer being handled by me, the rotation of the icon is not working anymore. I'm currently clicking here. But we're going to use actually some of the attributes that Ariakit applies. So I can add a class of group here to the select and use the group aria expanded to rotate my icon like that. So now it's rotating again, right? And what else? Well, I'm actually using this expanded state here to try and style this, but it doesn't work anymore either. So actually, I'll just remove all of the CSS, which is pretty ugly anyway, and just render here a select button like that. So this is something that Ariakit allows me to do. Select button is using, again, Aria expanded to style everything for me, and it's going to work nicely again with the styling. What about the popover? So I have this popover, and again, it's not working. Expanded is not a state that is being managed anymore, so we can remove this. And let's add here a select popover, which means that I don't need to have this absolute positioning anymore, and I can replace my top 20 with a gutter, which is built in here. Let's see. So the popover is back. What about my first item? So I have an item here, and it's like a custom item, and we can just call it select item. And instead of using hover, I'm going to use the provided data active item by Ariakit. So this is going to be handled correctly, whether you're using focus with the keyboard or you're hovering. It's going to be correctly styled based on the Aria attributes that Ariakit applies. Let's move on to the buttons. So we can also use an select item here. And again, let's not use hover. Let's use data active item. Oh, and I need to wrap this also here. Let's see if that's going to work. And then when I use the keyboard here, I actually need a higher contrast for that to be accessible, which is something I learned. So that's why I can replace the focus visible here with data focus visible. And now if you're hovering, it's the faint hover, but then using tabs, you will have this increased contrast, since that's your only way of knowing the current item. What else? I have this active account check, and it's checking whether the account is the same as the current account. Let's not use this, but instead use a select item check from Ariakit. And I lost my checkbox, but that's fine. It means I just need to add a value to the select item, which corresponds with the value of the provider. And I notice I forgot to style my inactive state. Let's do that as well with Aria disabled. There we go. What's next? Oh yeah, so all of this, by the way, is in the documentation. This is using Tailwind, but you can also use regular CSS. The docs will tell you everything and give you lots of examples. And there are so many Ariakit primitives, not just for select, but for menus and tooltips and autocompletes, and they all compose together. So it gives you full customizability. So I don't need my use state anymore because it's entirely handled by Ariakit. So let me remove this. And also, I don't need to set it here in handle switch account. So I no longer have these nameless divs, but these declarative, easy to read Ariakit primitives for my whole account selector. And I didn't compromise on any of the customizability that I needed to implement. Let's get to work on the async operation, which is the account switching here. So this is a lot of boilerplate code, and we can use new React 19 features to simplify this and to also fix this out-of-state spinner that doesn't correspond with the UI. So I'm going to use a React transition with the use transition hook. And this will allow me to mark a state update as non-urgent and also get the pending state of it with is pending and a function to start that transition. So let's use this instead of the current state and start the transition before calling the API. Like that, wrap it here. And transitions can be async in React 19, so I can just wrap it here, move the async keyword here. What just happened? I didn't save. So let's try this. So you'll notice that when I click this, I have the spinner. And this time, it's actually entirely in sync with the UI updating, because transitions only execute the state updates once all of them are completed. Next, for the API call. So rather than calling the API, I would like to use a function, which is going to be switch account. And this is a server function with use server here, which lets us call server code from the client. And under the hood, it creates this hidden API endpoint. And all I have to do is just call the function. So I'm just checking if the account is inactive and setting the cookie to switch the account. And I actually have type safety across the server boundary here, so I know that the response shape of this. So I can see that this is supposed to be a response.error, like this. And I don't need to parse this. It's just a function call, and just use the response error to toast here. And I'm doing router refresh, but I can actually move this revalidation of the page to the server function as well. So let's do instead revalidate path inside the server function, which will purge the server component cache and then update the UI. Let's see if it's still going to work. OK, it still works. What else? So for these toasts, I'm actually using an implementation by Ryan Toronto that he shared on Build UI. It's utilizing server-side or using cookies to do server-side toasts, which sounds kind of weird, but it's really useful. I'm not going to get into the details of this, but basically it's a server function. But what this means is that I can also move this toast code into my server function. And that will make them also work across page navigation. So this is very useful if you're working with, for example, a redirect or something like that. So let me remove these toasts. And I don't need this like that. And let's do the toast from the server. So I'm just going to do here with the error. And I'll do it here with a success. Switched. OK, it's a different message. That's fine. This is also nice because it's on the server that I know what I need to do. So let's try if it's still going to work. And it's still working. And let's use actually even more React 19 to simplify this handle switch account, which is slowly getting smaller and smaller. I have this naive implementation of an optimistic update, setting the value of the select. But let's get rid of this for now. And we don't need this either. And get rid of the whole state and just rename this to current account. And you'll see now why I added that, because without this, the value of the select is not updating until the server is done receiving this new value. And of course, we want the optimistic update. So let's use another hook from React 19, use optimistic. And this takes in a state to show when no action is pending or no transition is pending. So it's just going to be the current account from the server, which is our truth, right? And it returns an optimistic account and a function to set this. And we can call this, or we have to call this inside a transition, but we already have one. We can put it there. And then just use this optimistic account for all of our current account values, like that. Let's see if it's going to work again. So I have this optimistic update again, just with that 2 lines of code. And the way Upuse Optimistic works is it creates this temporary client state that it just keeps for as long as the transition is then still going, and then it settles to the past value here. And a way to see that it also handles potential errors is by commenting out this disabled here and trying to switch to an inactive account. So when I do that, I will have this optimistic update, but since the server value doesn't match, the client state is no longer corresponding, and we see that it just rolls back there. So it's sort of like an automatic error handler. So I simplified this handle switch account to just a few lines of code, and the transition is making sure the loading state is corresponding to the UI. And I made this arguably better with less risk of bugs. I'm actually done with my improvements, but let's add some final features to this account selector. I want to add a logout button so that we can also log out of this account. So I'm going to add a logout button here. And it's again using Ariakit, another custom UI element. You see it's here, logout. And I'll do an on-click for this. And I actually want to do another server function call with logout. So see this logout, all it's doing is just deleting the cookie. That is simulating that I'm logged in. And let's create a transition for this so that we, again, can have a pending state. I'm going to use a logout transition. And I'm going to start this around my call here. And it can be async. And I can add it like that. And then I can use the disabled logout is pending, or the active logout is pending, to disable the button. And then I can say logout is pending, logging out. So that's it for the logout button. See if it works also. Logging out, and then we are logged out. So the final step here is just to log back in. And this is just a button. And another feature of React 19 is that we can use form with the action property and bind these to function calls, or bind these to functions. And I want to bind to the login server function here. This time, though, I need to pass this email for this simulated auth to know how to log in. And I could make a callback function to pass this like this, but that would force me to make a client component. So actually, let's do a bind and just bind to the email that I want to use, which is janesmith@work.com. And I have also the submit button, which is handling some client-side interactivity for the login. It's a reusable component that uses form status to give me a spinner if a parent form is submitting. So I'm also using that here. And let's try this one as well. Great, that's a valid account, so I'm able to log back in. Okay, let's do like a final demo of what I have here. Let's just scroll up here so you can see this. So I can load the page and see the UI here right away, get the loading states with suspense fallbacks using server components. I can navigate with tab as expected, but I can also navigate here in this menu with my arrow up, arrow down keyboard keys. And all of my styling is applied accordingly here. I have this click outside functionality. I can do an escape to close it. It even adjusts its position based on how much space there is on the screen. All of this provided by Ariakit. And trust me, the screen reader here is also good because it's all provided by Ariakit. We can execute the switch. We have optimistic updates. We have this loading state, which is in sync with the UI. And we have a toast. And we can log out, get the loading state, and finally log back in. So what is sort of the bottom line here? What did we achieve? Well, with Ariakit, we were able to build this fully customizable, accessible UI. And rather than nameless divs, we got clean, declarative, composable component code without boilerplate. We were able to easily customize the UI and style it with our normal CSS flow with data and area attributes provided. And then with React 19, we were able to streamline the server communication with server functions and eliminating the need for a separate API layer. Actually, I forgot to do this, but let me also just delete the API layer just because we don't need it anymore. We also utilized alternatives to solutions like useState with use transition and use optimistic and got these smooth interactions, instant user feedback and error rollback, and simplified loading states and code. And finally, I was able to quickly add those additional features like logout button and login form with more server functions and transitions, and the React 19 form API and use form status. So the result of this is a maintainable, accessible, and user-friendly account selector with minimal boilerplate and modern best practices. Okay, let me get back to the slides. So that is the repo for what I just coded here. If you want to check it out, again, there's like lots of code there that I didn't show. I just focused on this one component. I hope that's useful. And again, this was mentioned just before my talk, but I'm currently working on creating the content for the React certification. So you can sign up for this to be notified when this will be available, where you can test your skills or learn best practices or even focus on advanced topics. So yeah. And that's it for me. Thank you for having me, Frontend Nation.
It was amazing having you here, indeed. Thank you very much for your practical presentation. I'm pretty sure that people learned a lot. And we have a few questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Perfect. So someone is asking, for developers new to React 19, what's one feature you're most excited about that they should start exploring for managing async operations?
So I think maybe you could tell by the amount of times I used it in the talk, but use transition is really great. It's underestimated for simplifying those loading states and making sure they are always in sync with whatever is happening asynchronously. So probably use transition.
Another person is asking, what's one practical strategy attendees can take away from your talk to ensure a smooth user experience when dealing with loading states and mutations?
I think it would be pretty much the same answer. So utilizing the React 19 features that have kind of, I mean, they were added to React 19 as a solution to some of these problems because it's a common problem to face as a React developer. So maybe just try out transitions, use optimistic, and see if you can get them to work in your apps. Maybe you can think of somewhere where you have this complex state and it would be suitable to try it out. Play around with it.
Perfect. Thank you. And we've got one last question for you. What's one of the biggest challenges you faced with async operations in UI, and how did you solve it?
I'm just going to think if there's a specific answer to this. It would probably be like back in the day before I started using React 19, I guess, because once you kind of unlock these features and what they're capable of, it gets a lot easier. But there are definitely something I've been working on, which I was not able to do that. I had to do some asynchronous debounce API call, and that's still very complicated. So I think maybe that one.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your talk. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.